When life throws you a curveball, how are you going to handle adversity? Welcome to the Fearless Mindset Podcast, where you're about to go on a journey as I interview security, business, and entertainment leaders on what it takes to stay fearless. I'm your host, Mark Ledlow, and enjoy today's episode. Hello, everybody. This is Mark Ledlow with the Fearless Mindset Podcast, and today it's a rare day. I got Pablo, and I have Lukas Quanstrom out there in Texas. Hey, Lukas.
Hey, Mark. Thanks for having me.
I think this is Pablo is my first guest in the studio for 2021, so that we'll have to get his name on the wall up here somewhere in the studio.
In person, what's that like, right? Here we go.
Yeah, it's like a conversation.
Yeah.
Very weird. Very weird. So you doing well, Lukas, out there? Doing good?
I mean, no complaints. I think window shades down so you don't get blasted by how amazingly sunny and, perfect temperature it is out here in Austin, Texas. So
shades on.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, things are good, man. We're lots going on in the world, as you are all aware. So we're definitely busy taking care of our clients, but certainly excited to chat with you guys today and take a bit of break from the work we do there to have our conversation.
Great. Well, I'll try and stay on our questionnaire that we got all filled out here. I'll get my glasses on. It's impressive on your background. I was on LinkedIn checking it out, and I see a background in marketing and social media, and now all of a sudden you're the co-founder and CEO of a technology company or OnTech. And it's like, whoa, that was kind of a crazy journey for you. And what'd you think when you're here now and in the past, 10 years of your career? Have you ever thought of yourself as a private sector FBI agent almost?
No, I mean, there's some hidden nuggets in there too. I think we could explore as well. Little paths I took in that LinkedIn profile. I never imagined I'd be sitting in a bedroom in my home as my end state. Here's what we're going to do. That bit aside, I do think if you would have told me I'd be doing what I do today 10 years ago, I probably wouldn't have believed it. It would have been like, well, that is an interesting, trajectory. But not that it was impossible necessarily, just more it would have been interesting to me, what in the world were the things that happened to put that, course in front of me? And what are the things that I would experience that would prepare me to be CEO of a technology company? So, it would have been very interesting and curious. I wouldn't say that I would be intimidated, if you asked me that 10 years ago. And, maybe we could dive in more into that in terms of my thinking around, kind of always keeping on and doing more and better and heavier lifting work as you go. So, yeah, it certainly is a unique path to get here, which I'm happy to share more about that too, if you'd like.
Yeah, I'd love to hear about what journey made you cross into protective intelligence, and what were the triggers in your career and the different background that you had to get to this point? Yeah,
absolutely. So, it's been my experience, at least, that, you don't always know the things that are preparing you for your future self. One of my favorite ways to phrase it is that I'm lucky, to be quite honest, but kind of in the Seneca, Roman philosopher definition of luck, where preparedness meets opportunity. Because in that vein, there were a lot of things that I didn't know were preparing me for this role that were, in fact, very relevant to what I do today. And so I'll give you some of those examples. One of my first careers was a recruiter at a university, right? So it's basically sales, but I had to have a lot of tough conversations around financial aid, and you don't have scholarships, or you didn't get in, or you did get in, and people crying in my office. And I was in like full suit and tie days back then. So a little different than now. But, having those tough conversations definitely prepared me for, tough customer conversations. One of those little nuggets in there is I was a musician for a long time, and so being a musician, you're in front of people, you're really exposed, really vulnerable. And so being in that spot and being comfortable with messing up, comfortable with, all that entails of kind of being on stage really is helpful, regardless of if I'm in front of a camera. It helps me if I'm in front of people and can be vulnerable about, hey, look, this is kind of the lens I have right now, and I'm going to share it with you. And you get feedback, whether it's applause or boos, right? As you do that, you learn, you keep going. So, then lots of other things too. So I studied marketing. That's kind of, would say I'm very horizontal in skill set. And the one area I may go a little deep is in marketing. But working in marketing, I worked agency side. You do a lot of pitching. You don't win business. It's a lot of work, a lot of tough love in that career path. And so I learned a lot about iron, sharpening iron there. And then, I was really fortunate to jump into a really fast-paced technology startup where there's a huge AOL, and not the AOL you're thinking of, but the AOL, I define it as acceleration on learning. When you're in a startup environment, you don't have a lot of resources necessarily. You're forced to do a lot more than you may otherwise do at a large company in a much shorter amount of time. So there's just a ton of learning that happens in a really condensed amount of time. And that education is just priceless. So, I think in that capacity, I was very fortunate to run a team of 125 people globally. And, how you do that, how you teach them, how you support, how you enable, it was just super key in terms of understanding the complexity of then managing managers, and those types of things. So in any case, that's some of the stuff that got me to then being prepared for the opportunity, which was when Tom Kopecky, one of the other founders of Ontic, it was his experience in the tradecraft, we call it, right? He was the one doing the investigative intelligence work, but recognized he needed help scaling, and he had a problem that, maybe technology could solve. What I saw was like, yeah, absolutely. In the MarTech stack, we've already gone and solved a similar problem of taking a lot of data and helping build a platform to, solve problems in a way that Tom saw it needed to be solved. And so it was really that convergence of being prepared to say, yeah, I actually do know how to go and execute on what you're trying to accomplish, Tom. And so that was a really special moment.
Wow. So a lot of different personalities involved in making that partnership work, understanding his skill set, understanding your skill set, weaknesses and strengths, weakness and so many complexities.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think, to the point on not being intimidated by it, when you go start something like we did with Ontic, there's definitely risk involved, right? I have a family I need to take care of. We're not going to take a salary. We're going to go invest in this business, spend time and energy. But that kind of goes back to one of those things where I wouldn't have been intimidated because I've always lived in that looking up and forward, right? My dad taught me growing up not to peak too early. Your best days aren't high school football. It's not, when I was in college, that was the best. But it's really about, hey, always looking for that next horizon. I've had some awesome days, but, I don't live in, just the past and saying, oh yeah, that was the best of times. It's like, no, I'm going to go create my best of times. When I'm 85, that's going to be when I'm really, starting to peak perhaps. So anyway, when I'm 85, I really want to be a great jazz pianist. That's actually what I want to do. So that's peak performance, I hope.
The artist of you comes out.
That's right. Finally, it just took 85 years.
Reinventing the wheel at 85. Yeah. So I know you guys are considered a technology company, and the product is data driven intelligence. Can you explain on the data your clients are wanting right now with COVID-19 happening right now, and they think, well, there might be a therapy, there may be a vaccine to it, and there may be a mutated virus of the COVID-19, all that. What are the clients asking of you guys right now, and from your conference calls and all that?
Yeah, I'll start with, the data-driven protective intelligence company and how we're tech and data, because, we could just be a data company. There's a lot of data providers out there. We could provide data to our clients in reports, spreadsheets, flat files, you name it. Lots of ways we could do that. The problem we saw there is that unlike, the threat landscape, which is dynamic, the data in that medium is not, right? And so it's old news as soon as it's downloaded or emailed or shared. And so, by being able to provide our clients access to our platform at any time, in any location, on any device, they're getting a dynamic view of the things they need to know about, because within our infrastructure, we're constantly and instantaneously updating data points that they care about. So they never have to worry about keeping things up to date, version control, who had access to the latest file, collaboration, reporting on it. We take care of all those things for them. And today, some of those things that they're concerned about really is, Our clients are worried about fast-moving threat landscape, and managing physical security threats driven by now a remote workforce, right? As I sit here, you guys aren't as remote, jealous. Past cases of horrific mass violence, COVID, domestic unrest. We see the protest violence, obviously, in this month of January here, the ramifications of the attack on the U.S. Capitol, on Nashville. And so, companies recognize, there's also a duty of care driven by the C-suite, the board, legal and compliance to ensure that all these threats are, they're logged, they're investigated, they're understood as best as they can, and they're being watched. And so, that's really what we're hearing a lot from our clients today. And once you hear that, it probably sounds like, oh yeah, of course, because look at the landscape that we're in today, unfortunately.
Yeah, so true. I mean, we never thought we saw what we saw in January, like you just put. It's just a perfect example of that. And now, we're, politically, now we're, what the politicians are thinking. And is it a reaction to fear? Is it going to be sustainable fear, or is it just a little trend we're going through? And that's what you guys on Ontic study, and you got Fred Burton on your board, and he's doing hashing out data and information to figure out false, true, false. We don't need Facebook. We got Ontic.
You just need Fred. And once you have Fred, you're probably set. That's all you need.
Exactly. But yeah, I know I'm impressed with your leadership. Also, I mean, I'm hearing you guys are raising a lot of money and funding just to grow your business in 2021. And I'm like, whoa, man, they're a private company, but they sound like looking like they're going to maybe go public here down the road or something like that. And I'm like, that's pretty interesting from a business standpoint.
Yeah, look, one of the, there's many things we deal with, as we think about building the company. But, macro level focus, you just mentioned one of the things for me that's super important, which is, first setting the vision for the company, helping our team know, where we're going to go, right? What are we going to do? What are we going to accomplish? The second one you mentioned, right? Funding. That's a big job of mine, right? I have to keep the business funded. Sometimes that's with customer revenue, right? And that's, of course, important to us. Other times, though, that's with venture backing. And we take on venture backing because the focus right now is growth. And so every dollar we take in goes right back into the business to continue to grow, to hire teams, to build new products, to enter into new markets. And so it's really exciting, to be quite honest. Of course, there's lots of challenges that come with that. And then the last thing I'd say, too, that's also important outside of the fundraising side is driving culture, right? Ensuring we're staying true to who we are, and how we work together and with our clients. And, primarily this is done through hiring. So those two are really intertwined, that, fundraising and feeding the business in terms of the cash flow. And then with really the right people who are just exceptional at what they do, provide great service and product to our clients.
And what's your headcount for employees now on Tech? You guys are growing at a rapid clip right now.
As of Monday, we added, 3 more, I think started on Monday. So I think we're, in the 80 to 90 range. I'd actually have to look it up to get you spot on, but I'll go with 82 is my best guess today.
Sounds good to me. That's some good growth there.
Yeah.
Craziness.
Yeah, I think a year ago we were around 25. Ooh. So it's been a busy year.
Wow. Yeah. So Lukas, one question I was asked is, one of my buddies in the industry said, hey, ask him, what are security concerns by some of your clientele that they're reaching out to you for a request on? I think you mentioned the riots and, the thing that happened in Capitol Hill and all that. Is there anything else that kind of sticks to your mind that you're getting requests on more than any?
Yeah. I think we see more teams asking for assistance while pivoting to an intelligence-driven security program. The old way of disparate hardware and personnel aren't suitable really to wage in the new era we are in. It's really the only way to get better situational awareness and operate more effectively, especially but not exclusively as we work remotely. And so I think taking that proactive approach, using data and intel to inform decisions, not to say that the hardening, solutions, the surveillance solutions, the people involved in helping keep, these companies and people and assets safe aren't important. But I don't think they're enough to just be a point of need. We need to really get ahead of and help prevent, and use the pre-incident indicators that we have access to say, hey, how can we avoid a failure of protective intelligence that we could have seen to prevent a bad thing from happening for our company. And so in light of some of the things we just mentioned, you have Nashville, you have the Capitol riots. Those are glaring indicators that, hey, there's enough out there to go see and use the intelligence that we have to go be smart about how we apply resources and how we mitigate threats to the principles we're trying to keep safe.
What about you talk about events that happen that might affect the continuity of a company, but that are not controllable. But what about targeted crimes or targeted events that will happen against a company?
Yeah, that's an area where we actually spend a lot of time, right? In terms of like, hey, do you know your known threats, right? Whether they're external or internal as the company. And how are you keeping a bead on those particular threats at any given time? Do you know where they are? Do you know their capacity? Do you understand the movements, right? And what are the indicators that you can look at that help you gain context, all right, in terms of like, yeah, hey, this could be problematic to our principal, whatever that principal might be, an executive, a group of employees, et cetera. So there's, of course, going to be things that are potentially outside of the control of the company. But if you even go look in terms of, hey, how could we be collaterally involved in something that's occurring, right? Do I want my CEO to attend the inauguration, right? Perhaps if I have a CEO of a public company, how am I going to handle that security concern? Do I want my employees to come back to an office? Are they safer at an office from a physical security standpoint? But then what about COVID? Or when I have thousands of people working remote and from home, are they safer from a health perspective? But then I don't have the ability to necessarily protect them if we have bad actors that don't like the business decisions that are occurring and know, hey, that person works at Starbucks and they're doing vaccine distribution now, and I don't really like that that's happening for N number of reasons. So there's a lot of implications and a lot of data to mine through and make sense of. And that's actually where technology, I think, is so important. It's that combination of data and technology, because it's just impossible without technology to manage the data that we have access to today.
Great question.
And that brought me to another question. Might be difficult to answer.
Shoot.
What you're saying makes a lot of sense. But how are the antagonist groups using this same methodology and technology to hurt us or to hurt, the well-to-do people?
So that's, I think I have some of Fred's books back there on the shelf. That's a great Fred question for sure. Talk to Fred Burton. I can give a perspective. Ultimately, we're helping build technology really that helps with counter surveillance. And so, who's watching, right? As you go back to, the notebook days where that was the technology, which, by the way, I still just use a notebook for many things that I do.
There you go. Old school.
Impossible to hack.
That's right, man. But when that was the technology, there was still not, okay, we're watching the principal, we're keeping the principal safe, but we're not watching for those individuals that are also watching, right? And so it's just taking that now at scale. We now have more conversations that occur, not just in the physical world, but in the digital world than even in the physical world, right? So how can we help make sense of those conversations? Do we know where to go find those? That's why, we started a product focused on dark web and darknet in addition to the open social web, because there's a lot of conversations happening there. Now, to your point, why are we there? Well, it's because that's where the antagonists are too. So we need to go where they are if we're going to go look for those pre-incident indicators. And that's going to be an ever-moving target, right, all the time. And so, I think even today there was a bulletin out right around domestic terrorism that just launched a couple hours ago. It's an unfortunate time, and there's lots going on. And so, companies have lots to think about as it relates to how do they operate and keep, their people safe, as well maintain business continuity in what's a really, complex and difficult time.
Okay. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And how easy it is for the criminal groups to obtain this type of information? I know it's easy for them to sell it, but how easy it is for them to actually go and obtain the information they need to do something bad, to plan an attack in terms of using technology.
Pretty broad statement. So I'd want to dig into, well, what types of information are they trying to collect, and exactly for what purposes, because there'd be a lot of ways to slice that one. But, I think my perspective is, nothing's really impossible. Lots of things can be taken from just about anyone. As we've seen, you look at the hack landscape and what's happened in terms of people taking information and data. It's very possible, right? And so you can take intelligence from what are seemingly very secure systems of operation, and then also you never thought you could take a podium out of the U.S. Capitol. So there's lots of things that can be taken if you take them.
Okay.
Good stuff. Good questions.
And is it easy to detect when they're taking it?
I would say no. I don't think it's impossible. But easy is not a word I would use necessarily. As I think about, is it easy to detect? No. Is it impossible? Also no. I'd say somewhere in that spectrum of easy to impossible, but that's a pretty big spectrum. I don't think I can reach that far.
Okay.
Good stuff.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah. I made my head go spinning in a couple of circles there. That's good.
Pablo, you've got secure transport concerns, right? For, high net worth individuals, and you're doing driver training so people can help people safe. Kind of same deal. What are you seeing in terms of the landscape out there today, and in your line of work, right? Is it status quo, same as ever, or is it no? Actually, there's a lot going on, and we're in a heightened sense, and we have more demand for what we're doing. I'd love to hear more about the work you're doing to help keep people safe.
Well, I think it's going to have to wait for another.
We can go ahead. We can go.
Yeah,
keep rolling. This is good.
In our case, we have an increased amount of work, even in Mexico and here in the U.S. In Mexico, we've always been advocates of switching into preventive measures, protective intelligence with what you do, and my partner Ivan Ivanovich. He has this whole concept about how if you compare protection, a protection team to a football, or not football, in this case it's soccer. I'm sorry,
soccer.
In Mexico it's football.
Right, exactly.
To a soccer team, we were usually catching them at the goal.
Yeah.
And we need to change that into, we need to catch them at their goal or in the middle of the field.
Yep.
Meet them at the middle. And you said something very interesting. They are watching, and we weren't watching them watch us. And that's where all this technology and protective intelligence, what you're doing, it comes very handy, but it comes with two sides, right? Because when we're doing protective, when we're designing a program for a client, and in Mexico they need it, the first thing we need to take care of is their information, right? And their information is out there, but there's a lot of hype and there's a lot of misinformation about how they get it and how easy it is to detect when that information has been stolen. Because, I mean, if somebody copies your hard disk and takes all your family pictures and saves them somewhere, well, you won't know that they've actually taken that information until they try to use it against you. But you won't know until it's too late, because that information has already gotten to the person that's going to hurt you. And that's where I was trying to focus my question is, if you catch that information by doing your protective intelligence, if you catch that information at the moment where it's being trying to be sold, or where they are trying to do the exchange, where it finally becomes very, very deeply but public at the end of the day, if you catch that, you have a lot of time to think and to plan on what to do. If you don't have that time, if you realize that information was stolen the moment they actually come and try to do something to you, they're just reacting. And like Gavin DeBecker in that book, just 2 seconds. Say, right. You only have 2 seconds to figure out what you're going to do, and that's not a lot of time.
I love the football, not American football analogy. I was a football/soccer player, and I think it's a better metaphor than American football, because any given time, are you on offense or defense? It's constant, right? You have to do both. And so I think, protective intelligence is a lot of that too, right? You have to be offense and defense at the same time in many cases. So I really like that metaphor of using football or soccer.
Soccer, exactly. Yeah, you have to play. You have to meet them when they're at the offensive, when they start their offensive, right? And I believe what you do in terms of technology is the future. One thing we've always advocated, and it's been difficult to drive into the minds of the people that do security, is that human beings are very limited in many ways, and many ways in which machines are very good. And likewise, machines are limited in other ways in which human beings are very good, right? So finding that balance will determine the future of security.
To add to that, Lukas, are you guys using a lot of AI in your software for detection purposes? Is that happening with OnTick?
Yeah, there's definitely a little bit that we're doing on the AI side for sure. And I would say that there's still a large human element to what we do by design, though, right? And so there's no like magic box that goes in. It's like, no. We're very transparent into and a lot of human control and decision making today on purpose, right? And so that's very much by design in everything that we do today. Or if we're going to use machines to do some thinking, it's very exposed to the thought process, the audit trails that are occurring, because we don't want any surprises, right? We do a lot of work with legal and compliance teams, and everything we do there is very focused on, okay, well, how do we get to this? Where did this data come from? Do I trust it? And how do we collaborate on that? And so we expose a lot of the collaboration and thinking that occurs within the platform on purpose. It's pretty neat.
Now, is your business model, I'm thinking, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's subscription-based by different corporation organizations. They just subscribe to your reports on a daily basis or monthly basis. Is that kind of the model of it?
So we license access to our software. And so it's, kind of all you can eat, log in whenever you want. It's cloud-based technology. And so, you jump into your app, you jump into browser to access, the software as a service. So we're licensing access there. And you may want to export reports, things like that. Great, go for it. It's typically an all-you-can-eat model there.
Oh, wow. So any CSO out there doesn't know about you guys, chief security officer or vice president of security global, whatever, those are the kind of clients they're going to probably want your services and your information so they can report to their shareholders or if not CEO.
Yeah, absolutely. We work with CSOs, CISOs, CIOs, GC, CLO. So those are the typical individuals that are fortunate enough to try to, keep their business moving and keep people safe in order to do so. You got it.
Now, are you seeing a bigger demand with like pharmaceuticals right now with the production of the vaccines right now? Is that on you guys' radar too with the threats left and far right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's many different use cases there. And so, who has access to those, right? Are the people that should have access to those? How do we know that they should have access to those? I think we've already seen a couple examples of some intentional spills or, and what have you. But then also, who's distributing those, right? How do we know there's secure transport that's occurring? Very high value goods that are being transported these days. And so there's a pretty big spectrum of companies of concern and making sure that, this goes, very effectively into market. Hopefully we see that happen in the next few months.
Right. Now, most of the vaccines, are they coming in from Germany and Europe? Kind of what the news I'm getting is most of them are coming from overseas, being shipped over here stateside. But that's what I'm hearing. I don't know if that's true or not.
I can't confirm or speak to that one, Mark. Sorry.
That maybe you might know. Darn it.
No, I nothing I can share on that one.
Roger that.
The one thing I've heard about
Go ahead, Pablo.
About vaccines, and especially in South America and all that, is that they've started to appear in the black market. So there's a very high concern for counterfeits.
Whoa, didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yep. Wow. You go buy yours on Craigslist. It'll be fine. Go for it.
Yeah, but it's got to be counterfeiting, right? Because there's not a lot of availability for the actual thing. So it's got to be, that's dangerous.
Whoa. Yep. Never thought about that.
Yep.
Holy crap. We have a mess. All right. Well, I know you got stuff to do, and I think went over our time, but thanks for coming on, Lucas. And want to pay a plug in for your company and what you're doing for all the organizations out there. And yeah, you guys are rocking and rolling over there and like a rocket ship. I'm waiting for you guys to go public so I can buy my stock.
Right on. Well, I definitely appreciate it. You guys, it was great. Paulo, Mark, appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Thank you, sir.
Lucas.
See you soon.
Take care.